What if everything you thought you knew about the ancient world was only half the story? We walk among the remnants of civilizations long gone, their towering pyramids, their cryptic symbols carved into stone, their legends whispered through generations. And yet, for all our advanced technology and historical research, some of their most incredible achievements remain utterly inexplicable. These aren't just gaps in the archaeological record. These are full-blown enigmas that defy logic, challenge timelines, and stir something deep within us, a tantalizing mix of awe and curiosity about what our ancestors truly knew, built, and perhaps even understood about the universe itself. Today, we're setting out on a journey to explore 25 of the most compelling unexplained wonders from the ancient world. From structures engineered with impossible precision to artifacts that seem to belong in another time, each of these mysteries holds a piece of a puzzle we're still trying to solve. Think about the last time you stood before something ancient, maybe in a museum, or even seeing photos of ruins, and felt that humbling sense of connection across centuries. That's the feeling we're embracing here. This isn't just a list, it's an invitation to wonder, to question, and to marvel at the sheer ambition and sophistication of those who came before us. So whether you're a history enthusiast, a lover of mysteries, or simply someone captivated by the idea that there's still so much left to discover, you're in the right place. We'll traverse continents and eras, digging into stories that archaeologists, scientists, and historians still debate today. By the end, you may not have all the answers, but you'll certainly see the ancient world in a new light, filled with possibility, wonder, and the thrilling unknown. Let's begin. Our journey into the unexplained begins with perhaps the most iconic ancient structure on Earth, the Great Pyramid of Giza. To truly grasp the scale of this mystery, you have to picture the scene. We're talking about a monument constructed from over 2 million stone blocks, each one weighing an average of 2.5 tons. That's like stacking the entire population of a major modern city, but having each person represent a block of solid stone. And this was accomplished over 4,500 years ago, long before the invention of the wheel, iron tools, or even the pulley. The sheer logistics are mind-boggling, but the precision is what truly defies belief. The four sides of the pyramid's base are almost perfectly aligned with the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Its alignment to true north is so accurate, it's within 1/15 of a single degree. Modern architects with satellite technology and laser-guided equipment would be proud of such an achievement. So how did an ancient civilization manage it with nothing but copper chisels and limestone measuring rods? For generations, the accepted theory has involved massive ramps. The idea is that workers hauled these multi-ton blocks up earthen inclines that grew alongside the pyramid. But this explanation is fraying at the seams. The sheer volume of material needed for a ramp tall enough to reach the top would have been almost equal to the pyramid itself, a construction project of its own. Furthermore, the angles required would have become impossibly steep, and no archaeological evidence for such a gigantic ramp system has ever been found. This is where the mystery deepens, opening the door to more speculative but fascinating ideas. Some researchers point to evidence that the ancient Egyptians might have understood how to soften or even dissolve stone using acidic plant extracts, effectively creating a primitive form of geopolymer concrete that could be cast in place instead of quarried and moved. Others look to the pyramid's very dimensions, which seem to encode sophisticated mathematical concepts. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height is remarkably close to 2 times pi, a mathematical constant that wasn't officially calculated until millennia later. Is this a coincidence or a deliberate design feature? This has led to theories suggesting the builders possessed a lost knowledge of mathematics and astronomy far more advanced than we've credited them with. Were they working from blueprints given by a much older, now vanished civilization? or perhaps they had access to technologies that simply haven't survived in the archaeological record. The Great Pyramid doesn't just stand as a tomb for a pharaoh, it stands as a permanent question mark, challenging our timeline of human progress and whispering of secrets we have yet to rediscover. Yet if the Great Pyramid represents an enigma of monumental scale and manpower, our next wonder demonstrates a mystery of breathtaking miniature complexity. Recovered from the depths of the sea near the Greek island of Antikythera in the early 20th century, the mechanism was initially dismissed as a lump of corroded bronze and wood, just another artifact among statues and pottery from a sunken Roman cargo ship. It wasn't for another half-century, with the advent of X-ray technology, that researchers saw through the calcified crust and were left utterly astounded. They weren't looking at a rock, they were staring at the remains of an intricate mechanical computer, a complex clockwork of interlocking bronze gears housed in a wooden frame roughly the size of a large shoebox. Dated to between 250 and 100 years before the Common Era, this device, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, is so advanced that nothing remotely comparable would appear again for over 1,000 years. The purpose of this ancient machine was nothing short of phenomenal. It was a precise analog calculator designed to model the cosmos. By turning a hand crank on its side, an operator could advance the mechanism through time, and a series of dials and pointers on the front and back would move in perfect harmony with the heavens. It could predict the positions of the sun and the moon, the phases of the lunar cycle, and even the eclipses of both celestial bodies with remarkable accuracy. It tracked the movements of the 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks and followed the irregular path of the sun through the zodiac. Some of its dials even served as a calendar for the cycle of ancient games like the Olympics. This wasn't just a scientific instrument. It was a comprehensive demonstration of a highly sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mechanical engineering. The genius of the device lies in its intricate gearing system. Researchers using high-resolution CT scanners have identified at least 30 separate interlocking bronze gears, though the original mechanism may have contained many more. Some gears are perfectly circular, while others are subtly elliptical or feature offset pins to account for the known irregularities in celestial motions, particularly the Moon's elliptical orbit. One of the most brilliant features is a pin and slot device that elegantly mimics the Moon's varying speed as it travels around the Earth, a complex motion known as the first lunar anomaly. This level of mechanical nuance is staggering for its time. To put this in perspective, clockwork of similar complexity wouldn't become widespread in Europe until the development of astronomical clocks in the 14th century. The Antikythera mechanism effectively leapfrogs over a millennium of technological history, appearing as if it were a relic from a different timeline entirely. This profound technological leap inevitably leads to the burning question of its origin. Who could have possibly designed such a marvel? While the shipwreck it was found on was Roman, the device itself is undoubtedly Greek in craftsmanship and inscription. The most tantalizing clue points directly to the legendary island of Syracuse and its most famous inhabitant, the genius inventor Archimedes. Ancient writings by Cicero describe a device built by Archimedes that sounds eerily similar, a complex globe that replicated the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. While the Antikythera mechanism postdates Archimedes' death, it is entirely plausible that it was built by his followers, working from his designs and carrying on his school of thought. Perhaps it was even one of several such devices, a masterpiece from a workshop dedicated to turning abstract mathematical theories into tangible brass and bronze reality. Its presence on a Roman ship suggests it may have been plunder, a prized treasure taken from a conquered Greek city to be displayed in a wealthy Roman's villa, only to be lost to the sea for 2,000 years. The mechanism stands as a powerful testament to a vein of ancient Greek science and technology that was almost entirely lost to history, forcing us to completely reconsider the technological capabilities of the ancient world. Leaving behind the intricate clockwork of the Antikythera Mechanism, we travel from the depths of the Mediterranean Sea to the vast, arid plains of southern Peru. Here, sprawled across a plateau so dry and windless that designs can last for millennia, lies one of archaeology's most visually stunning and perplexing puzzles, the Nazca Lines. Created by the Nazca culture between 500 BC and 500 AD, these are not structures you can walk through or artifacts you can hold. They are geoglyphs, massive designs etched directly into the desert floor. The method of their creation seems deceptively simple. The dark, sun-baked stones and pebbles that cover the Pampa de Nazca were carefully removed along the lines of a predetermined design, revealing the much lighter, whitish-yellow sand and clay beneath. This stark color contrast is what makes the lines so clearly visible, but the simplicity of the technique ends there. The true marvel lies in their monumental scale and impossible precision. These are not small drawings. We are talking about lines that run perfectly straight for miles across rugged, uneven terrain. There are geometric shapes, immense trapezoids, triangles, and spirals that stretch to the horizon. And most famously, there are over 70 colossal figures depicting animals, plants, and mythical beings. There is a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a condor that seems to stretch across the landscape, a spider, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, and even a bizarre humanoid figure nicknamed the astronaut. Some of these individual figures are over 1,200 feet long. To put that in perspective, you could fit the Empire State Building laid on its side nearly 3 times over within the span of that single hummingbird's wings. The sheer size of these geoglyphs presents the central, baffling question. How were they designed and executed with such flawless proportions without the creators ever being able to see their work from above? For centuries, the only way to truly appreciate the Nazca lines was known only to the birds. It wasn't until the advent of commercial flight in the 1930s that the full, breathtaking scope of these drawings was revealed to the modern world. This has fueled endless speculation, including the now debunked but popular idea that ancient astronauts or advanced alien technologies must have been involved. The far more fascinating truth is that the Nazca people almost certainly achieved this with simple tools, ingenious surveying techniques, and a deep generational commitment to their purpose. Archaeologists believe they used a system of stakes and ropes. A small-scale model could have been made on a grid system, and then that grid could have been scaled up dramatically on the desert floor by teams of workers moving the stones according to the master plan. From ground level, the lines would have looked like little more than paths or cleared areas. The workers would have been trusting the mathematical process, never witnessing the magnificent whole they were creating. This makes their achievement not just an artistic endeavor, but a staggering feat of applied mathematics and communal organization. But why would an ancient civilization invest such enormous effort into creating art that they could never fully see? This is the mystery that truly captivates researchers. The leading theory suggests a profound religious or astronomical purpose. Many of the long, straight lines have been found to align with the position of the sun during the solstices or with celestial bodies on the horizon. The animal figures may have represented constellations or deities in the Nazca cosmology. It's believed that these lines were not meant for human eyes at all, but were instead sacred pathways meant for the gods. The Nazca, living in one of the driest places on Earth, would have been utterly dependent on water. Their rituals likely involved pleas to mountain deities and sky gods for life-giving rain. It's possible that these immense drawings served as ritual walking paths, where priests or pilgrims would traverse the lines as part of a ceremony, their footsteps a form of prayer visible from the heavens. Other theories propose they were markers for underground water sources, or even giant looms for weaving enormous ritual textiles. Whatever their ultimate purpose, the Nazca Lines stand as a powerful testament to human ingenuity and spiritual longing, a message etched into the very skin of the planet, intended for an audience in the sky. Shifting our focus from the sun-scorched plains of Peru to the misty, green landscape of the English countryside, we encounter a mystery built not for gods in the sky, but perhaps for the very cycles of the sun and moon themselves. Stonehenge is instantly recognizable, a silent, stoic ring of towering sarsen stones capped with imposing lintels. But the familiar image belies a truly profound enigma that begins not on Salisbury Plain, but over 150 miles away in the Preseli Hills of Western Wales. This is the source of the monument's smaller, inner bluestones, and the journey these rocks undertook is the first layer of this ancient puzzle. We're talking about dozens of stones, each weighing up to 4 tons, being transported by a Neolithic culture over a distance equivalent to walking from London to Paris, all without the wheel, without draft animals, and over terrain that included rugged mountains, dense forests, and powerful rivers. The sheer logistics are enough to boggle the mind. How did they do it? The most widely accepted theory suggests a combination of water and land routes. The stones might have been hauled on wooden sledges and rollers overland to the Welsh coast, then loaded onto rafts or crewed boats to travel along the coastline and up rivers. The final leg of the journey would have required dragging them overland again to their final destination. This endeavor would have been a monumental feat of social organization, requiring the coordinated labor of hundreds of people across multiple generations, all dedicated to a single, seemingly inexplicable goal. It wasn't just about moving stone, it was an act of profound cultural significance, a literal pilgrimage with a geological payload. The effort invested in transporting these specific stones, rather than using readily available local rock, suggests the bluestones were believed to possess unique, powerful properties, perhaps seen as sacred or magical from their place of origin. Once assembled, the purpose of this great stone circle has been debated for centuries. Its most obvious function is its breathtaking alignment with the heavens. During the summer solstice, the rising sun directly behind the heel stone shines its light into the very heart of the monument. Conversely, at the winter solstice, the sun sets perfectly between the uprights of the tallest trilithons. This celestial connection is too precise to be accidental, pointing to Stonehenge serving as a sophisticated astronomical observatory and a gigantic calendar stone, marking the changing seasons which were critical for agriculture and ritual life. But was that its only purpose? Recent archaeological work has revealed a far more complex story. Extensive surveys of the area have uncovered a vast ritual landscape surrounding Stonehenge, filled with burial mounds, processional avenues, and other wooden and stone structures. Most strikingly, excavations have revealed that Stonehenge itself was for centuries first and foremost a cemetery. The cremated remains of over 60 individuals, men, women, and children, have been found there, making it the largest Neolithic burial site in Britain. This has led to the compelling theory that Stonehenge was primarily a domain of the dead, a place of ancestral veneration and funerary rites. The solstice alignments might not have been for predicting seasons, but for symbolically connecting the world of the living with the realm of the ancestors, with the sun's light serving as a bridge between the two. Another fascinating theory proposes it was a center of healing, a Neolithic Lourdes. The presence of many bluestone chips around the site, combined with ancient folklore about the stone's curative powers, suggests pilgrims may have traveled great distances to chisel off small pieces to take home as talismans for healing the sick. So, which was it? An astronomical computer, a burial ground, or a healing center? The most satisfying answer is that it was likely all three at different times or even simultaneously. Stonehenge's story was written over more than 1,000 years. Its purpose evolved with the culture that nurtured it. It began as a circular ditch and bank, a place to bury the cremated dead. Centuries later, the blue stones were brought from Wales, perhaps by migrants who brought their sacred stones with them, integrating their beliefs with those of the local people. Finally, the giant sarcens were erected, creating the iconic stage for ceremonies that could harness the power of the solstice sun for a society deeply concerned with death, ancestry, and the natural world. Stonehenge doesn't present a single mystery but a layered tapestry of them, a testament to the enduring human need to build meaning, to connect with the cosmos, and to honor those who came before us in the most permanent way they knew how. Leaving behind the ancient landscapes of Britain, our journey takes us to one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth, a tiny volcanic speck in the vast expanse of the South Pacific Ocean. Here on Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as it is known to its indigenous people, we find a mystery carved in stone that is both haunting and colossal, the Moai. Scattered across the island are nearly 900 of these immense figures, their stoic, elongated faces gazing inland with a silent, imposing presence. The average Moai stands about 13 feet tall and weighs a staggering 14 tons, but the largest one ever erected, named Paro, towers at 33 feet and tips the scales at an almost unbelievable 82 tons. These are not merely statues, they are monolithic giants, and their creation on such a remote island with limited resources forms the core of an archaeological puzzle that has captivated the world for centuries. The process of creating a Moai began at a single source, the volcanic crater of Rono Raraku. This was the island's sacred quarry, and it remains an utterly surreal landscape today, littered with nearly 400 statues in various stages of completion. It's as if the workers simply walked away one day, leaving their tools behind. Using only stone hand picks called toki, carved from a harder volcanic rock, teams of craftsmen would painstakingly chip away at the soft volcanic tuff of the crater wall, first carving the statue's face and then working their way down its back, eventually freeing it from the bedrock. The skill involved is evident in the unique features of each statue, suggesting they were portraits of powerful ancestral chiefs. But carving the statue was only the first and perhaps the easiest part of the challenge. The real, back-breaking mystery lies in how they were transported miles across the island's rugged, hilly terrain to their final ceremonial platforms known as ahu. For decades, the prevailing theory was that the Rapa Nui people used a combination of log rollers and rope, with large teams laboriously pulling the statues horizontally over a prepared path. This logical assumption, however, was challenged by a revolutionary and now famous theory proposed by archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo. They suggested that the Moai didn't lie down for their journey, they walked. In experiments that almost seem like a scene from a fantasy epic, teams have successfully walked a concrete replica Moai by using 3 strong ropes. One team on either side would rock the statue forward, while a third team at the rear would control the backward swing, creating a shuffling, upright gait that could move the multi-ton figure forward with surprising efficiency. This method, which aligns with local oral traditions that the statues walked to their platforms, seems incredibly plausible. It would require far fewer people than log rolling and seems less likely to damage the fragile stone. Yet, it remains a hotly debated topic, with other researchers arguing that the bases of many statues show where patterns consistent with being dragged. The true method may have been a combination of techniques, a secret knowledge now lost to time. The purpose of these staggering efforts was deeply spiritual and social. The Moai were not gods, but representations of deified ancestors. Each statue, once completed, was placed on an ahu, a stone platform that served as a ceremonial center for a specific clan or family group. These platforms were almost always positioned on the coast, and the Moai were placed with their backs to the sea, their watchful eyes overlooking the village and its people. It was believed that the mana, or spiritual power, of the ancestor it represented would flow through the statue, bringing prosperity, fertility, and protection to the community. The competition between clans to build larger and more elaborate moai was fierce, driving an ever-increasing investment in these stone monuments. This cultural drive, however, may have also set in motion the island's tragic downfall. The story of Easter Island is often held up as a stark parable of ecological collapse. When Polynesian settlers first arrived around 1200 AD, the island was covered in a lush forest of giant palm trees. This forest was the lifeblood of the society, providing wood for homes, canoes for fishing, and crucially, the material for transporting the moai. As the population grew and the statue-building culture intensified, the trees were cut down faster than they could regenerate. Without trees, the soil eroded, crop yields fell, and the islanders could no longer build seafaring canoes to hunt deep-water dolphins, a key protein source. Society fractured into warring clans. The oral traditions tell of a period of violence, starvation, and even cannibalism. The statue-building culture ground to a halt, and in the ensuing chaos, many of the moai were toppled from their platforms during clan conflicts. The Europeans who first arrived in the 18th century found an impoverished society and a landscape littered with fallen giants. The silent, stoic moai thus stand as a powerful dual symbol, and breathtaking testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and communal effort, but also a haunting memorial to the profound consequences of exhausting the very resources a society depends upon for its survival. Moving from the colossal stone figures of Easter Island, we find our next mystery not carved from rock, but crafted from clay and metal, small enough to hold in your hands yet powerful enough to rewrite our understanding of ancient innovation. In 1936, workers excavating for a new railway line near Baghdad unearthed a most peculiar object from a 2,000-year-old Parthian tomb. It consisted of a 5-inch-long clay jar, inside of which was a copper cylinder, soldered shut at the top with a lead and tin alloy. Suspended within that cylinder, not touching the sides, was an iron rod. The jar showed signs of corrosion, and it was quickly identified by the German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig as having been sealed with an acidic substance like vinegar or wine. To Koenig, the arrangement was unmistakable. He was looking at a primitive galvanic cell, an ancient battery. If filled with an acidic electrolyte, this simple device could have produced a little over 1 volt of electricity. The idea was so anachronistic that it sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, forcing us to ask a stunning question: did the ancients harness electrical power? The immediate and most compelling theory for its use is electroplating, the process of using a small electrical current to bind a layer of precious metal like gold onto the surface of a less valuable metal like silver or copper. This practice was well known in the region. Museums are filled with Parthian and Sasanian artifacts, particularly small statues and jewelry that are expertly gilded. The conventional explanation has always been that artisans used mercury to apply thin layers of gold leaf, but the presence of these so-called Baghdad batteries opens up a fascinating alternative. A dozen of these cells, connected in series to create a higher voltage, could have provided enough current to electroplate a small object. It's a tantalizing possibility, suggesting a form of ancient technology we never knew existed. Other theories, while less proven, are equally intriguing. Some researchers have proposed a medical application. Ancient Greek and Roman texts describe the practice of using electric fish, like the torpedo ray, to generate shocks for pain relief, a primitive form of electrotherapy. Perhaps a battery provided a more controlled and consistent source of this therapeutic shock. Alternatively, the device could have held a purely religious or mystical significance. The mild tingle of a current from such a cell might have been interpreted as a divine sensation, a magical trick performed by a priest to demonstrate a connection to the gods within a temple setting. The simple act of making a metal object vibrate or bubble in a liquid through electrolysis would have seemed like pure magic 2 millennia ago. Yet, for all the captivating possibilities, the mystery is deeply shrouded in skepticism. The biggest question isn't just what it was for, but why we haven't found more evidence of its use. If this was a widespread technology, where are the wires? Where are the other batteries or the tools that would have been used with them? Only a handful of these objects have ever been found, and some archaeologists offer a far more mundane explanation. They suggest the jar was simply a sacred storage container for important religious scrolls. The iron rod would have been the core around which a papyrus or parchment scroll was wrapped, sealed inside the protective copper cylinder to keep it safe from moisture and insects. The corrosive residue could then be explained by the organic decay of the scroll itself over centuries. This explanation, while less exciting, reminds us of the importance of Occam's razor in archaeology. So, where does that leave us? The frustrating and beautiful truth is that we may never know the true purpose of the Baghdad battery for certain. Its existence sits in a tantalizing gray area between proven fact and speculative fiction. It serves as a powerful symbol of a recurring theme in our exploration of the ancient world. The idea that our ancestors may have stumbled upon technologies and principles that we assume are modern, only to have that knowledge lost to the ravages of time, war, or simply a lack of a need to develop it further. Even if it was a battery, it was likely a curiosity, a localized invention that never sparked a wider electrical revolution because the societal infrastructure, the need for lighting, motors, or mass communication simply didn't exist to demand it. The Baghdad battery therefore stands not as a missed opportunity, but as a brilliant flash of proto-scientific insight, a quiet spark of genius in the ancient world that flickered out, waiting millennia to be rediscovered. While the Baghdad battery represents a mystery of potential ancient technology, our next wonder is a puzzle of language and meaning, a book that has openly defied understanding for centuries. Tucked away in the Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University is perhaps the world's most infamous unreadable book, the Voynich Manuscript. This peculiar 240-page codex, named after the Polish-American book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, who acquired it in 1912, is written entirely in a unique, unknown script. Its vellum pages are filled with over 170,000 bizarre characters that form no recognizable words in any known language, flowing from left to right in a script that seems both fluent and entirely invented. But the text is only half the mystery. The manuscript is abundantly illustrated with strange, cryptic, and sometimes unsettling drawings that only deepen its enigma. These images depict plants that have never been identified, nude female figures bathing in or connecting to a complex network of green, organic pipes, intricate astronomical diagrams of unknown constellations, and what appear to be biological or cellular structures seen through a microscope, an invention that was still centuries away. Carbon dating has placed the manuscript's vellum to somewhere between 1404 and 1438, placing it firmly in the early Renaissance period in Europe. The style of the illustrations and certain details in the astronomical section suggest it may have originated in northern Italy. Yet, despite knowing when it was made, we have absolutely no idea why or by whom or for what purpose. This complete absence of context is what has fueled over a century of intense study and countless theories, ranging from the scholarly to the wildly speculative. The most persistent theory is that it is a ciphertext, a document written in code to protect valuable secret knowledge. The most famous historical owner was the 16th century Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, a man renowned for his fascination with alchemy and the occult. This has led many to believe the manuscript contains alchemical recipes, perhaps even the instructions for creating the Philosopher's Stone. The bizarre, interconnected tubing and basins in the biological section could be interpreted as diagrams for alchemical distillation processes. Alternatively, the many drawings of unidentifiable plants have prompted the theory that it is an elaborate herbal guide, a pharmacopoeia of secret medicinal knowledge that a skilled apothecary or doctor would have wanted to keep from competitors. Then there is the hoax theory. Could the Voynich Manuscript be an elaborate, centuries-old forgery designed to separate a wealthy patron like Rudolph from his money? Proponents of this idea point to the statistical properties of the text. While the script looks consistent and follows certain patterns, like certain characters only appearing at the start of words and others only at the end, some analyses suggest it could be a form of glossolalia, or meaningless automatic writing, designed to look like a real language without actually containing any information. The strange plants could then be composite drawings, imaginative hybrids of known species created to look exotic and valuable. However, the sheer effort and cost of producing a 200-plus page vellum book in the 15th century makes a purposeless hoax seem incredibly unlikely. The time, skill, and expense involved would have been enormous for a mere prank. In the modern era, the quest to crack the Voynich code has become a grail for cryptographers and computer scientists. During World War II, codebreakers from both British and American intelligence agencies, including legends from Bletchley Park, took a crack at it and failed, defeated by a puzzle older than their work on the Enigma machine. More recently, the power of artificial intelligence has been brought to bear on the problem. In 2018, a team of Canadian researchers used AI to analyze the text's patterns, programming it to see if the script could be decoded from one known language into another. The AI initially suggested the text might be encoded Hebrew, but the resulting translation, which included phrases like "she made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people," was grammatically shaky and far from convincing. Other computer-driven analyzers have supported the idea that the text has the structural complexity of a genuine language, not a random forgery, but the meaning remains locked away. The enduring fascination with the Voynich Manuscript lies in this perfect storm of mystery. It is a physical object from a known time and place, yet it feels utterly alien. It presents all the features of a legitimate language with a structured alphabet, word and sentence length consistency, and patterns that suggest syntax and grammar, but it matches nothing in our historical records. It is a book that was clearly important enough for someone to spend a fortune creating it, and for emperors and scholars to covet it for centuries, yet its message is completely lost. It stands as a humbling reminder that despite all our advanced technology and historical knowledge, there are still pages from the past that we simply cannot read, a silent library of one volume whose secrets remain fiercely guarded. But if the Voynich Manuscript represents a mystery of unreadable knowledge, our next wonder presents a paradox of incredible geographical accuracy that seemingly should not exist. In 1929, amidst the dusty archives of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a fragment of an ancient world map was discovered that would send shockwaves through the field of cartography. Drawn on gazelle skin parchment in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis, the map itself was already a fascinating historical artifact. What made it truly extraordinary, however, was a small notation Reis made in the margins. He explained that his work was a compilation, synthesized from 20 different source maps, some of which he claimed dated back to the Library of Alexandria in the 4th century B.C., and even included charts drawn by no less than Christopher Columbus. But the map's most baffling feature lies far to the south. It appears to show a landmass at the bottom of the world, a continent we now call Antarctica, with one stunning and impossible detail: it's depicted without its massive ice cap. This is the central, mind-bending mystery of the Piri Reis map. The continent of Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years after this map was drawn. Even more confounding, Antarctica has been buried under ice for millions of years, with its last ice-free period ending roughly 34 million years ago. For any human civilization to have mapped its coastline, they would have had to do so in a remote prehistoric era, and that knowledge would have had to survive, passed down through countless generations and cultures, eventually finding its way into the hands of a 16th-century Ottoman scholar. The section of the map believed to represent Antarctica, while crude, shows topographical features that bear a striking resemblance to modern seismic surveys of the continent's subglacial topography, particularly the Queen Maud Land region. This has led to a compelling and controversial theory that the Piri Reis map is based on source maps from an incredibly ancient, advanced, and now vanished seafaring civilization, one that possessed the technology and knowledge to conduct a detailed survey of the entire planet. Naturally, this idea has sparked intense debate. Mainstream scholars offer a more conservative interpretation. They argue that the southern landmass on the Piri Reis map is likely a composite of misunderstood New World coastlines, perhaps a distorted version of the southern tip of South America, or a speculative addition of the mythical Terra Australis Incognita, a hypothetical large southern continent that European cartographers had been including on their maps for centuries. They point to inaccuracies in the map, such as the misplacement of the Caribbean islands and the stretching of the South American coast, as evidence that it is a product of its time, not a perfect relic of prehistoric knowledge. The apparent match with Antarctica's subglacial coast, they suggest, could be a coincidence, a trick of the eye when comparing a stylized, ancient drawing with modern scientific data. Yet the precision of some elements remains difficult to dismiss. The map accurately depicts the Andes Mountains, and the inclusion of animals like llamas in South America demonstrates the use of sources with genuine local knowledge. The most tantalizing clue is Piri Reis's own testimony about his source material. If he truly had access to maps from the Library of Alexandria, which itself was a repository for knowledge from across the ancient world, including Babylonian, Greek, and Phoenician sources, then he was working from information that was already thousands of years old in his time. This chain of custody leads us down a path of profound speculation. Could the original cartographers have been the Phoenicians, renowned as the greatest sailors of the ancient world? Or perhaps a civilization even older, like the Minoans? The most dramatic theory, popularized by author Charles Hapgood, points to a lost civilization like Atlantis, a sophisticated culture allegedly wiped out by a cataclysm at the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, whose survivors may have passed their advanced geographical knowledge onto emerging cultures. The Piri Reis map ultimately stands as a Rorschach test for how we view ancient history. To some, it is a fascinating but ultimately flawed medieval document, its mysteries easily explained by known historical context and the cartographic conventions of the age. To others, it is a ghostly echo, a single surviving fragment of a vast, forgotten atlas that proves human history is far older and more complex than our textbooks dare to admit. It challenges the linear narrative of human progress, suggesting that advanced knowledge can be lost, that civilizations can rise, fall, and vanish without a trace, leaving behind only the faintest of clues in the margins of a map drawn by an admiral who was merely trying to preserve the wisdom of the ancients. Our journey now leads us high into the Andes Mountains of Peru, to the ancient Inca capital of Cusco. Perched on a hill overlooking the city is the fortress temple complex of Sacsayhuaman, a site renowned not for its size or its statues, but for the impossible perfection of its stonework. Walking among these walls is a profoundly disorienting experience. You are confronted by stones so massive they defy comprehension. The largest block is estimated to weigh a staggering 360 tons, yet they are cut and fitted together with a precision that seems to belong to the Machine Age, not the Bronze Age. These are not simple rectangular blocks. The stones feature complex, multi-angled faces with as many as 12 distinct sides, each one carved to interlock perfectly with its neighbors in a vast, three-dimensional stone puzzle. The joints are so incredibly tight that you cannot slide a single piece of paper, let alone a razor blade, between them. This flawless masonry was achieved without a single drop of mortar, and has withstood centuries of earthquakes that have repeatedly toppled the Spanish colonial buildings constructed on top of them. The question of how the Inca achieved this is a multi-layered mystery. The official narrative, supported by archaeological evidence, tells a story of incredible patience, skill, and communal effort. The Inca had no iron or steel. Their hardest metal was bronze, far too soft for quarrying granite and andesite. Instead, they used stone tools. Hammers made from even harder stones were used to pound and shape the blocks, gradually pecking away at the surface over countless hours. To move these multi-ton leviathans from quarries miles away, they likely used a system of ropes, log rollers, and earthen ramps, harnessing the power of thousands of workers. The final fitting, the most miraculous part, is thought to have been done by a process of trial and error. A block would be placed against its neighbors and the points of contact would be marked. It would then be lowered and workers would painstakingly peck away at the marked spots, lifting and testing the fit over and over again until it settled into its perfect, immovable position. But this logical explanation bumps up against some formidable physical realities. The sheer time and labor required for such a method with stones of this size and number is almost unimaginable. This has led to more speculative yet fascinating alternative theories. One persistent idea involves the use of plants. Certain species native to the Andes have extremely high acidic content. It's possible the Inca discovered that by applying a paste made from these plants to the stone surface, they could literally soften the rock, making it malleable enough to shape with their stone tools. After a period of time, the rock would re-harden, leaving behind a perfectly sculpted face. This theory of plant-based stone softening is often dismissed by mainstream archaeologists due to a lack of direct evidence, but it persists in local oral traditions and offers a compelling solution to the puzzle of their speed and precision. Beyond the how lies the even more impressive why. Why invest such astronomical effort into creating walls of such incredible complexity? The answer appears to be seismic genius. Peru is one of the most seismically active regions on the planet, and the Inca were master anti-seismic engineers. The design of the Sacsayhuaman walls is a perfect example of this. The irregular, interlocking blocks and the slight inward incline of the walls create a structure that is incredibly dynamic. When an earthquake strikes, the walls don't resist the energy, they dance with it. The stones shift and sway minutely, absorbing and dissipating the seismic forces, and then settle perfectly back into place once the shaking stops. The mortar-less construction is key. Rigid mortar would crack and crumble under such movement, but the flexible, dry-fit design allows for this life-saving flexibility. These walls were not just built to last, they were built to survive the very wrath of the earth itself. The purpose of Sacsayhuaman adds another layer to its grandeur. To call it merely a fortress is a simplification. For the Inca, it was a sacred huaca, a ceremonial center representing the head of the puma, whose body was outlined by the city of Cusco below. It was a place of worship, a storehouse for imperial treasures, and a staging ground for elaborate festivals. The famous zigzagging walls are just one part of a vast complex that included temples, towers, and underground chambers. The scale of the endeavor speaks to the absolute power and organizational might of the Inca Empire. Building Sacsayhuaman was a statement of divine right and earthly control, a project that required the coordinated labor of entire communities for generations. It stands today as a breathtaking testament to a civilization that could move mountains, not with magic, but with an unparalleled understanding of stone, community, and their volatile, sacred landscape. Leaving behind the precisely fitted stones of the Incas, we travel back in time thousands of years earlier to the very dawn of settled human society. Nestled on a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey, a discovery was made in the 1990s that has fundamentally shaken the bedrock of archaeology and forced us to rewrite the story of human civilization. This is Göbekli Tepe, a complex of stone circles so ancient that it predates Stonehenge by a staggering 6,000 years. Its construction began around 9600 BC, a time when humanity was believed to be comprised of small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers, living a hand-to-mouth existence focused solely on survival. According to everything we thought we knew, these people simply did not have the time, resources, or social organization to embark on a project of such monumental scale and sophistication. Göbekli Tepe turns this entire narrative on its head. The site itself is a breathtaking landscape of concentric stone circles, each ring defined by massive T-shaped limestone pillars. These are not small stones. The largest pillars stand over 18 feet tall and weigh between 15 and 20 tons each. They were quarried from the local bedrock and transported, likely using wooden rollers and ropes up the hill to the site. But the true marvel isn't just their size, it's their artistry. Many of these pillars are not blank monoliths. They are masterfully carved with a stunning menagerie of animals: foxes, gazelles, scorpions, vultures, and boars, all rendered in intricate high-relief detail. This was not crude graffiti. This was sophisticated, symbolic art created by skilled artisans over 12,000 years ago. The purpose of these enigmatic circles is the central mystery. There is no evidence that anyone ever lived at Göbekli Tepe. Archaeologists have found no hearths, no houses, no trash pits indicative of a village. Instead, what they have discovered are the remains of what appears to be the world's first temple, a purely ritualistic gathering place. This turns the traditional model of human development inside out. The long-held theory was that agriculture came first. The idea was that once humans learned to farm, they could produce a surplus of food. This surplus allowed for specialization. Not everyone had to hunt or gather, so some people could become priests, artists, or leaders. This specialization led to social stratification and organized religion, which then required the construction of permanent ceremonial structures. Göbekli Tepe flips this sequence entirely. Here we have evidence of a massive communal building project and complex symbolic art created by people who were, by all accounts, still hunter-gatherers. This presents a stunning new possibility. Perhaps it was the urge to come together for ritual that sparked civilization itself. The need to build and maintain this sacred site may have been the catalyst that forced hunter-gatherers to settle down, at least seasonally. Feeding the large groups of people who gathered here for ceremonies would have placed enormous strain on the local environment. This pressure could have provided the incentive to start cultivating wild grains, like the einkorn wheat that grew naturally in the region, to create a predictable food source. In other words, the desire to worship may have been the mother of invention, leading directly to the domestication of plants and the dawn of agriculture. This makes Göbekli Tepe not just a temple, but potentially the very birthplace of the Neolithic way of life that would eventually spread across the globe. Adding another profound layer to the mystery is what happened to the site around 8000 BC. After over a millennium of use, the people of Göbekli Tepe deliberately and carefully buried their entire temple complex under tons of earth and rubble. They didn't abandon it, they entombed it. This was a colossal undertaking in its own right, and it seems to have been a deliberate act of preservation, a way to protect their sacred ground for eternity. This careful burial is the primary reason the carvings are so impeccably preserved today, waiting silently for 12 millennia to be rediscovered and to tell their world-altering story. Göbekli Tepe stands as a humbling reminder that our ancient ancestors were far more complex, ambitious, and spiritually profound than we ever imagined, and that the seeds of civilization were sown not in fields of grain, but in the human mind's desire to connect with something greater. Moving from the world's oldest temple complex, we venture into a man-made underworld of staggering scale and equal mystery. In the summer of 1992, in the Chinese province of Zhejiang, a curious farmer named Wu Anai decided to pump the water out of a small local pond. Such ponds were common in the area and were believed to be nothing more than deep, natural pools. But as Wu pumped day after day, he revealed something that would defy all expectations. The water was not filling a natural depression. It was hiding the entrance to an immense hand-carved subterranean grotto. This was not a simple cave. When the water was finally drained, the villagers found themselves staring into a colossal architectural space supported by enormous sculpted pillars and adorned with stunningly precise carvings. This was the first of what would become known as the Longyu Caves. News of the discovery spread, prompting locals to drain 23 additional ponds in the area. Each one revealed an identical secret. They were all man-made caverns, each an enormous underground hall carved by hand from the solid silestone sandstone. The scale of this achievement is almost incomprehensible. Each individual cave is massive, with an average floor area of over 10,000 square feet and ceilings reaching heights of 100 feet. The total volume of rock excavated from all 24 caves is estimated to be over 1 million cubic meters. To put that Herculean labor into perspective, if that same amount of rock were to be broken down into standard-sized bricks, it would be enough to build a wall that could encircle the entire planet. And this was accomplished over 2,000 years ago, during a period historians believe was the Western Han Dynasty. The precision and artistry on display are what elevate these caves from a mere quarry to a profound archaeological enigma. The walls, ceilings, and supporting pillars are uniformly decorated with a series of parallel chisel marks, all cut at a consistent, precise 60-degree angle. This pattern was not a functional necessity. It was a deliberate aesthetic choice, creating a stunning, rhythmic visual effect across every single surface. The chiseling is so uniform and meticulous that it had to have been the work of master craftsmen following a single, grand design. The builders also demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering. The pillars are strategically placed to support the immense weight of the ceiling, and the sides of the cave slope at a precise angle to distribute pressure and prevent collapse. They even carved out specific areas that were left untouched to act as permanent, immovable supports. This complex understanding of rock mechanics and load distribution ensured the caves have remained structurally sound for 2 millennia. This brings us to the central, baffling question that hangs over the entire complex. Why, for an undertaking of such staggering proportions, there is a complete and utter silence in the historical record. No ancient text, no local legend, no official chronicle, nor any folk tale makes even a passing reference to the construction of these caves. This is perhaps the deepest layer of the mystery. A project that would have required the labor of thousands of people working for generations simply vanishes from history as if it never happened. What was their purpose? One of the leading theories suggests they were a royal tomb complex or a sacred underground necropolis. The sheer scale and effort would befit an emperor, and the lack of records could be explained if the project was abandoned or if the workers were silenced to protect the tomb's secret location. However, no artifacts, no burial goods, and not a single human remain have ever been found inside any of the caves, which is highly unusual for a tomb. Another theory posits that the caves were an enormous mining operation. The particular type of sandstone found there is rich in minerals, and it's possible they were digging for something like iron ore. But this theory quickly falls apart under scrutiny. The careful, decorative chiseling of every single wall and ceiling is completely unnecessary and counterproductive for a mine. Miners seek efficiency, not beauty. The incredible uniformity of the chisel marks suggests an artistic or ritual purpose, not an industrial one. A third idea is that they served as secret military barracks or storage facilities, perhaps for a king or warlord preparing for a long conflict. Yet again, the lack of any evidence of habitation, no soot from fires, No remnants of tools or supplies makes this unlikely. The most compelling theory, and perhaps the most poetic, is that the Longyu Caves were a vast ceremonial center, an underground kingdom built for the gods or for ancestral spirits. The effort itself may have been a form of worship, a devotional act on a civilization scale. The consistent, rhythmic chisel marks could have held a symbolic meaning, and the act of transforming a mountain from solid rock into a majestic, hidden hall could have been a central part of their religious practice. The cave's secrecy might not be an accident of lost history, but the entire point. They may have been intended to be hidden by water, only to be revealed or accessed during specific sacred ceremonies, making them one of the most awe-inspiring and mysterious ritual spaces ever created by human hands. Yet if the Longyu Caves represent a mystery of immense hidden labor, our next wonder presents an enigma of perfect exposed form. Scattered across the Diquis Delta of Costa Rica and in a few other parts of the country lies a collection of objects so geometrically perfect they seem to defy their ancient origins, the Costa Rican stone spheres. First brought to global attention in the 1930s when the United Fruit Company was clearing land for banana plantations, workers began unearthing these mysterious orbs from beneath the ancient soil. They are not mere rounded rocks, they are sculpted spheres of granodiorite, a hard, igneous stone, and their precision is what immediately captivates the eye and baffles the mind. Ranging in size from a few inches to over 8 feet in diameter, with the largest weighing an astounding 16 tons, these spheres display a surface smoothness and a geometric perfection that rivals modern machine-tooled objects. The most perfectly crafted examples have a surface variation of less than 2 millimeters from a true sphere, a level of precision that seems almost supernatural for a culture that, as far as we know, worked only with stone tools. The creators of these mysterious objects were the pre-Columbian peoples of the region, likely the ancestors of the now extinct Diquis culture, who flourished from around 800 AD until the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. The process of creating a sphere began at a quarry where a large boulder was first roughly shaped into a cube. From there, artisans would have patiently pecked away at the surface with hammerstones made of an even harder rock, gradually rounding the corners and smoothing the faces. The final stages likely involved meticulous grinding with sand and water, a painstaking process that could have taken generations for the largest spheres. The true genius, however, lay in their quality control. How did they ensure such near-perfect roundness without modern measuring devices? Researchers believe they may have used a simple but brilliantly effective method, suspending the sphere on a cradle of ropes and using a plumb line or a fixed length of cord to measure the distance to the surface from multiple points, slowly grinding down any high spots until the distance was perfectly uniform. This simple application of geometry demonstrates a profound understanding of form and measurement, but the how, as fascinating as it is often overshadowed by the equally puzzling why. What purpose did these immense and perfectly shaped stones serve? The most common interpretation is that they were potent status symbols. The sheer amount of labor required to create even a single, small sphere meant that only a powerful chieftain or a wealthy family could commission one. They were likely placed in prominent positions in front of important buildings or along pathways leading to a leader's residence, serving as a clear, physical manifestation of their power, wealth, and influence. The size and perfection of a sphere would have been a direct reflection of the owner's stature within the community. This theory is supported by the fact that many spheres were found arranged in lines or in geometric patterns, such as triangles or parallelograms in public plazas, suggesting they were on display for communal viewing and admiration. A more celestial theory suggests they were aligned for astronomical purposes. Some of the found arrangements have been analyzed and appear to correspond with significant astronomical events, such as the rising and setting of the sun during the solstices or equinoxes. They could have served as a permanent stone calendar, helping to regulate agricultural cycles and religious ceremonies tied to the seasons. This idea connects the defies culture to a tradition seen in other ancient societies, from Stonehenge to the Nazca Lines, of using monumental art to track the heavens. However, the unfortunate truth is that many of the spheres were moved from their original positions during the initial clearing of the land in the 1930s, making it incredibly difficult for archaeologists to be certain of their original alignments. This has irrevocably clouded the astronomical theory, leaving us with tantalizing possibilities but little concrete proof. Adding another layer of intrigue is the complete absence of any written record or oral tradition among the contemporary indigenous peoples of Costa Rica regarding the sphere's purpose. The knowledge of their meaning was lost, likely due to the devastating impact of European diseases and the cultural disruption that followed the Spanish conquest. This vacuum of information has, of course, invited more speculative ideas. Some have proposed they were navigational aids, markers for trade routes, or even representations of celestial bodies like the sun or the full moon, given their perfect circular form. A few more fringe theories have suggested they were gifts from the gods or had connections to the legendary lost continent of Atlantis. While these ideas are captivating, most archaeologists lean towards the social and astronomical explanations, seeing the spheres as a stunning achievement of a sophisticated society that used art, science, and immense effort to display power and understand their universe. Today, these enigmatic orbs are recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected not just for their beauty, but as enduring symbols of a culture's ingenuity and a mystery that continues to roll on through time. Our journey now takes us from the open landscapes of Costa Rica into the shadowy, sacred halls of an Egyptian temple, where a single enigmatic carving has sparked a debate that bridges the gap between ancient symbolism and futuristic technology. Deep within the Hathor Temple at Dendera, a site dedicated to the goddess of love, joy, and motherhood, there is a relief that seems profoundly out of place. In a crypt beneath the temple, a massive stone slab depicts a scene that, to a modern eye, is instantly recognizable. A large, translucent, pear-shaped bulb, inside of which a snake undulates in a wavy line. This bulb is held aloft by a long, supporting pillar, and a cord seems to run from its base to a small box upon which a kneeling god rests his feet. A second figure stands, gripping the pillar with both hands, as if in attendance. To many who see it, the interpretation is immediate and electrifying. This appears to be an ancient Egyptian light bulb, with the snake representing the filament and the pillar as its socket. This compelling image forms the heart of what is known as the Dendera light theory. Proponents argue that this is literal evidence of advanced electrical knowledge possessed by the ancient Egyptians. They suggest the bulb is a Crookes tube or similar glass vessel, the snake is an illuminated electrical filament, the pillar is an insulated power cable, and the box is a battery or power source, perhaps similar to the Baghdad battery we discussed earlier. The attending figures are then seen as priests or technicians operating the device. They point to the absence of soot in many deep interior temple passages and tombs as potential supporting evidence, asking how such intricate artwork could have been completed in total darkness without an electric light source. This theory proposes that such knowledge was a closely guarded secret of the priesthood, lost to time after the fall of ancient Egyptian civilization. However, Egyptologists and mainstream archaeologists offer a dramatically different and far more contextually grounded interpretation. To them, this relief is not a technical diagram but a rich piece of religious iconography. The key to understanding it lies not in 20th century technology, but in ancient Egyptian mythology. The bulb is not a glass vessel but a depiction of a lotus flower, a potent symbol of creation and rebirth from which a divine entity is being born. The snake is not a filament but a representation of the god Harsomptus, a form of Horus emerging from the lotus. In other versions, the snake is the deity Her, a god of eternity, or it symbolizes the cosmic snake that traveled in the solar bark of the sun god Ra. The entire scene is a snapshot of a well-documented creation myth. The supporting pillar is interpreted as a jed pillar, a symbol of stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. The cord is likely a lotus stem, connecting the flower to its roots and symbolizing the connection between the divine and the earthly. The box at the base is not a battery but a representation of the primordial mound from which all life emerged. The two figures are not technicians but the gods themselves. The kneeling god is often identified as Her, while the standing figure is a protective deity. The whole tableau is a spiritual and symbolic representation of the moment of creation, the genesis of life and light from the primordial waters, an event of cosmic significance that was central to the temple's function. The debate between these two views, ancient technology versus religious metaphor, highlights a fascinating tension in how we interpret the past. The light bulb theory is undoubtedly appealing because it suggests a hidden history, a lost chapter of human achievement that makes the ancient world seem more mysterious and advanced. Yet it often does so by stripping the imagery from its cultural and religious context. The temple walls at Dendera are covered from floor to ceiling with similar complex scenes, all of which are consistently and coherently explained by Egyptian mythology. To pluck this one relief out and give it a purely technological reading is to ignore the entire narrative ecosystem in which it exists. Furthermore, if this was a working diagram for an electrical device, one would expect to find other corroborating evidence, wires, bulbs, or larger infrastructure somewhere in the archaeological record, which we simply do not. Ultimately, the Dendera light serves as a powerful Rorschach test. What we see in that ancient carving says as much about us as it does about the Egyptians. We project our own world onto the past, seeking familiar shapes in the sacred symbols of a culture with a profoundly different way of seeing the universe. Whether it is a depiction of a miraculous birth from a lotus flower or a schematic for a forgotten technology, the relief undeniably represents a form of light, but one that is far more likely to be the divine light of creation, meant to illuminate the soul, than the incandescent glow of an electric bulb meant to light a room. It stands as a beautiful reminder that the ancient world was capable of producing profound wonders that were spiritual and intellectual, achievements that are no less impressive for being metaphysical rather than mechanical. While the Egyptians were perfecting their stonework for the pyramids and the Inca were shaping their interlocking walls, another ancient culture was engaged in a construction project of such staggering scale that it seems to defy the very laws of physics. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon stand the ruins of the Roman Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek, a site of immense grandeur. But the Romans, master builders in their own right, were not the first to build here. They constructed their magnificent complex on a platform made of the largest cut stones ever used in human history, a foundation so massive and so perplexing that its origins have been debated for centuries. The most famous of these is the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single block of limestone that measures an almost unbelievable 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet wide, with an estimated weight of nearly 1,000 tons. To put that into perspective, that is heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747 jetliner, and it is not alone. Right beside it lies another, even larger block, nicknamed the Stone of the South, which is estimated to weigh a staggering 1,650 tons. These are not just big rocks, they are geological leviathans, and their very existence at the site poses a monumental question. How were they moved? The Roman temple complex itself is a marvel, built over several centuries beginning around the 1st century BC. The Romans identified the site with Jupiter, the king of their gods, and constructed a sanctuary meant to inspire awe and submission. They raised towering columns and carved intricate details, but all of this rests upon a terrace made of these gargantuan stones, which they called the trilithon. The Romans clearly did not quarry or place these blocks. They found them already there and built upon them, attributing their creation to a race of giants. This leaves us with a profound mystery. Who were the true builders of this foundational platform, and what forgotten methods did they employ? The precision with which these blocks are cut and fitted is remarkable, with seams as tight as those at Sacsayhuaman, suggesting a culture with advanced stone working knowledge that predates the Romans by centuries, possibly even millennia. The most widely accepted theory points to the Phoenicians or another local Canaanite culture, who worshipped a triad of deities at the site long before the Romans arrived. For them, Baalbek was a sacred center, possibly dedicated to the sky god Baal. The religious significance of the location may have been the very reason for such an insane investment of labor. To create a platform worthy of the gods, perhaps only the most colossal stones would suffice. It was a statement of devotion written in stone on the most epic scale imaginable. The process of quarrying these blocks is somewhat understood. The stones were cut directly from the nearby quarry, where one even larger block, estimated at 2,000 tons, was partially cut and then abandoned, still attached to the bedrock. Workers likely used wooden wedges that were soaked with water to expand and crack the stone along natural fissures, but the quarrying is the easy part. The true mind-bending challenge was transportation. How do you move a 1,000-ton block of stone nearly a mile from the quarry to the temple site? The conventional explanation involves an immense workforce, perhaps tens of thousands of men, pulling the block on a prepared road using ropes and rollers. They might have built a massive sled and used levers and winches to inch it forward. This method, while theoretically possible, presents almost insurmountable practical problems. The friction involved would be enormous, and the pressure on any wooden rollers would likely cause them to splinter and collapse under the weight. Furthermore, the terrain is not perfectly flat, requiring a carefully engineered path that has left no archaeological trace. This has led to more speculative theories involving lost technologies. Some researchers have proposed the use of advanced levering systems or even a type of ancient cement that could have been used to lubricate the path, reducing friction. Others, looking at the precise fitting, wonder if the builders had discovered a way to soften the stone temporarily, making it easier to shape and maneuver, a theory also proposed for Inca constructions. Another fascinating idea involves a principle of kinetic energy known as stone rocking. By attaching wooden cages to the sides of the block, teams of workers could rhythmically rock it back and forth, using its own immense weight and momentum to walk it slowly forward in a series of tiny, controlled lurches. This method would require far less raw manpower than dragging and could potentially navigate slight inclines. Yet, even this seems almost fantastical when applied to an object the size of a small house. The sheer audacity of the project suggests that the answer may not lie in a single forgotten machine, but in a lost science of logistics and social organization, a society so unified in its sacred purpose that it could coordinate the movement of mountains as an act of collective faith. The Baalbek megaliths stand today not just as ruins, but as a permanent challenge to our understanding of ancient capabilities, a reminder that the past may hold secrets of engineering and cooperation that we have yet to fully comprehend. Our journey now takes us from the colossal megaliths of Baalbek to a high, misty plateau in the mountainous Xieng Quang province of Laos, where an entirely different kind of stone mystery lies scattered across the landscape. Imagine walking through rolling green hills and finding yourself surrounded by thousands of gigantic carved stone jars, some standing upright, others toppled over, all blanketed by lush grass and the whispers of an ancient past. This is the Plain of Jars, a vast and enigmatic archaeological site that consists of over 90 known locations, with an estimated total of more than 3,000 of these immense stone vessels. Carved from sandstone, granite, and other locally sourced rock, These jars vary dramatically in size, from barely large enough to hold a basketball to absolute giants over 9 feet tall and weighing several tons. Many are unadorned, while others feature intricate carvings of human figures, faces, or simple geometric patterns around their rims, hinting at a culture with both skilled artisans and a deep symbolic tradition. The central, enduring question surrounding the plane of jars is simple yet profound. What were they for? The most widely accepted theory, supported by archaeological evidence uncovered in and around the jars, points to a complex funerary practice. Excavations have revealed human remains, burial goods like beads and ceramics, and fragments of bone inside and buried near the jars. This has led researchers to believe they were used as primary or secondary burial urns. In a primary burial, a body would be placed inside the jar to decompose, a practice seen in other Southeast Asian cultures. For a secondary burial, after the flesh had decomposed elsewhere, the collected bones would be carefully placed inside the jar as a final resting place, a sacred container for the ancestors. The smaller jars might have held the remains of infants or children, while the massive ones could have accommodated multiple individuals or served as community ossuaries. This theory paints a picture of a society with a deep reverence for the dead, investing enormous communal effort to create these permanent stone vessels to honor and protect their loved ones in the afterlife. However, the funerary explanation is not the only possibility. Some researchers propose a more practical, yet equally vital, purpose related to the storage of vital resources. The jars could have been massive containers for storing rainwater during the monsoon season, to be used throughout the dry months in a region where water access was crucial for survival. Alternatively, they might have been used for fermenting or storing alcohol, such as rice wine, for large-scale community ceremonies and feasts. In this context, the jars become symbols of life and celebration rather than death, central to the social and ritual cohesion of the people who made them. This duality of purpose, serving both the practical needs of the living and the spiritual needs of the dead, is not uncommon in ancient cultures, and it is entirely possible the jar's function evolved over centuries of use. Dating these enigmatic artifacts has been a challenge, but current research points to their creation and use during the Iron Age between 500 B.C. and 500 AD, and potentially even earlier. They are attributed to a mysterious Mon Khmer-speaking culture that predated the arrival of Lao and Thai peoples in the region. Very little is known about these people beyond their incredible stonework. They left no written records, and their other structures were likely built from perishable materials like wood and bamboo that have long since vanished, leaving only these enduring stone jars as their lasting legacy. The discovery of similar, though smaller, jar sites in India and Indonesia suggests this may have been a wider cultural practice, perhaps spread by ancient trade routes, with the Laos site being the most spectacular and extensive expression of this tradition. Tragically, unlocking the full secrets of the plane of jars has been severely hampered by a much more recent and devastating layer of history. During the Vietnam War, the Dinh Quang province became one of the most heavily bombed places on Earth as it lay along the strategic Ho Chi Minh Trail. The United States dropped over 2 million tons of ordnance on Laos between 1964 and 1973, and a staggering proportion of those bombs, perhaps as many as 30%, failed to detonate on impact. This has left the landscape littered with unexploded bombs, cluster munitions, and landmines, making archaeological survey and excavation incredibly dangerous. For decades, these deadly remnants of war have made large areas of the Plain of Jars completely inaccessible to researchers, silencing the stones and preventing a fuller understanding of the ancient culture that created them. Humanitarian bomb disposal teams, working tirelessly and at great personal risk, have only recently cleared a few of the main jar sites for safe public and scientific access, but the vast majority remain off-limits, their secrets guarded by an invisible, deadly barrier. This makes the Plain of Jaws a uniquely poignant mystery, a site where the enigmatic puzzles of the ancient world are tragically entangled with the brutal conflicts of the modern one. But if Baalbek and the Plain of Jaws represent mysteries of construction and purpose, our next wonder presents an enigma of social order and civic planning on a scale that seems to defy its ancient age. Journey back over 4,000 years to the banks of the mighty Indus River in what is now modern-day Pakistan, and you would have found one of the world's first and most breathtakingly modern cities, Mohenjo-Daro, whose name aptly translates to Mound of the Dead. This was not a haphazard collection of huts and palaces. It was a masterpiece of urban design, a metropolis that boasted amenities and a standard of living that would not be rivaled in many parts of the world for thousands of years. The most striking feature of Mohenjo-Daro, which it shared with other Indus Valley cities like Harappa, was its obsessive devotion to order. The entire city was laid out on a precise north-south, east-west grid system, a planned design that required immense central authority and foresight. The main streets were wide, straight boulevards with narrower lanes branching off to connect neighborhoods, all designed to manage traffic flow and provide efficient access for its estimated 40,000 inhabitants. This organizational genius extended far above the ground. The city was built on massive mud brick platforms to protect it from seasonal floods, a testament to their understanding of their environment. The buildings themselves were made of uniformly sized, kiln-fired bricks, a level of standardization that is astonishing for the era. But the true marvel of Mohenjo-Daro, the feature that truly separates it from its contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia, lies beneath the streets. The city possessed what may be the world's first comprehensive urban sanitation system. Almost every single house had its own dedicated bathing area with a watertight floor and a drain. These private drains connected to a network of covered sewers that ran along the main streets, channeling waste away from the population. Manholes provided access for maintenance, a concept that feels utterly modern. This wasn't a privilege for the elite. It was a civic standard, indicating a society that valued public health and hygiene to a degree unmatched until the Roman Empire, and even then, not for another 2 millennia. Complementing this waste removal system was an equally sophisticated supply of fresh water. The city featured hundreds of wells, providing clean, filtered water drawn from the water table to individual households and neighborhoods. They also built elaborate public water tanks, the most famous being the Great Bath. This large, waterproofed pool, likely used for ritual purification ceremonies, was built with such precision that it barely leaks even today. This dual focus on water management, bringing clean water in and efficiently taking wastewater out, suggests a profound understanding of civil engineering and epidemiology. Life in Mohenjo-Daro for its time would have been remarkably clean, safe, and organized, a stark contrast to the crowded, often unsanitary conditions of other ancient urban centers. Yet this seemingly ideal civilization, which spanned over 1 million square kilometers, presents its greatest mystery not in its life but in its death. Around 1900 BC, Mohenjo-Daro and the entire Indus Valley civilization began a precipitous and irreversible decline. The great cities were gradually abandoned, the writing system faded from use, and the sophisticated culture dissipated. Why, archaeologists have debated this for decades, and no single theory provides a complete answer. One early hypothesis pointed to a violent invasion by a foreign force, specifically pointing to the nomadic Indo-Aryan peoples described in ancient Vedic texts. This Aryan invasion theory was supported by a handful of skeletons found haphazardly in the city's streets, seemingly suggesting a massacre. However, this theory has largely fallen out of favor. The number of skeletons is too small to represent a city-wide slaughter, and there is no evidence of widespread burning or destruction that would typically accompany a military conquest. A more compelling explanation points to environmental catastrophe. geological evidence suggests that the region underwent significant climate change around this time. The monsoons may have weakened or shifted, leading to prolonged and devastating droughts. The lifeblood of the civilization was the Indus River and its tributaries, which provided water for drinking and irrigation for their massive agricultural surplus. If those rivers dried up or changed course dramatically, the entire economic foundation of the society would have collapsed, leading to famine, resource wars, and a gradual dispersal of the population into smaller, simpler villages. Another related theory suggests that the civilization might have been too successful for its own good. Centuries of intensive agriculture could have salinized the soil, making it infertile. Deforestation for fuel and brick-making could have led to severe erosion and siltation of the rivers, causing catastrophic floods that eventually broke the people's spirit. It's possible that a combination of these factors, drought, river shift, and environmental degradation, created a death spiral from which even this advanced culture could not recover. The most haunting aspect of the end of Mohenjo-Daro is its silence. Unlike the violent collapse of Roman cities or the recorded falls of Mesopotamian empires, the Indus Valley civilization seems to have simply faded away. There was no grand burning, no obvious conqueror's footprint. The people likely drifted away over generations, their sophisticated knowledge of urban planning, writing, and standardized weights and measures slowly fading into obscurity. They left behind a puzzle for us, a civilization that achieved a level of social organization and civic comfort that was arguably millennia ahead of its time, yet one that proved ultimately fragile in the face of environmental change. Mohenjo-Daro stands as a powerful and sobering lesson from the past, a reminder that even the most advanced societies are deeply intertwined with and dependent upon the natural world that sustains them. Shifting our focus from the urban grid of Mohenjo-Daro, we venture into the windswept countryside of Brittany in northwestern France, where an entirely different kind of ancient mystery stands in silent, orderly rows. Here, near the village of Karnak, lies the most extensive collection of standing stones anywhere on the planet. We are not talking about a simple circle or a handful of monoliths. This is a vast, sprawling landscape of megalithic architecture on a scale that is almost overwhelming to witness. Spread across several square miles are over 3,000 prehistoric stones, meticulously arranged in long, parallel lines that seem to march across the fields and forests like a petrified army frozen in time. The largest of these alignments, known as Voynich, features 11 converging rows of massive stones stretching for nearly 3,300 feet. The sheer number and organization of these monoliths, erected over 6,000 years ago during the Neolithic period, represent one of the most ambitious and baffling construction projects of the ancient European world. The effort required to create this stone forest is a staggering testament to the determination and unity of the people who built it. The stones themselves, primarily local granite, were not small. While many are man-sized, numerous giants within the alignment stand over 13 feet tall and weigh many tons. Quarrying, transporting, and erecting even one of these stones using only stone axes, wooden levers, and rope would have been a significant undertaking for a small community. To do this thousands of times over, arranging them with such deliberate geometric precision, speaks to a society with powerful leadership, sophisticated engineering knowledge, and a shared purpose so compelling that it consumed generations of their lives. This was not a weekend project. It was a civilization-defining endeavor that must have been at the very heart of their cultural identity for centuries. But what was that purpose? This is the central, enduring enigma of the Karnak alignments. The most prominent and scientifically supported theory points to a function in astronomy. The precise rows and their orientation toward the horizon have led many researchers to propose that the stones acted as a gigantic celestial calendar or observatory. Certain alignments appear to be sited on the rising and setting points of the sun and moon during the solstices and equinoxes. This knowledge would have been critical for a farming society, providing reliable markers for planting and harvest times. Furthermore, the complex patterns may have been used to predict lunar eclipses or track other astronomical events that held deep religious significance, turning the entire landscape into a massive, open-air temple dedicated to understanding the cycles of the cosmos. Another compelling theory suggests the site was primarily a sacred ceremonial space, a pathway for ritual processions. The long, parallel avenues could have guided large groups of people walking from one end to the other, perhaps moving between areas designated for specific rites or offerings. This interpretation is bolstered by the presence of other megalithic structures in the immediate area, such as massive burial mounds known as tumuli and elaborate stone tombs called dolmens. It's easy to imagine a society conducting funerary processions through the stone rows, moving the deceased from the world of the living toward their final resting place in a tomb, symbolically walking a path defined by their ancestors represented in stone. The entire region could have been a vast ritual landscape, with the alignment serving as the grand processional approach to these sacred burial grounds. Over the centuries, local folklore has offered its own colorful explanations, often involving mythical figures. One of the most enduring legends tells of the Roman legionnaires who were pursuing the Christian Pope Cornelius. As the saint fled, he turned the entire army to stone, creating the alignments where they stood. In another version, the stones are a pagan army petrified by God for their heathen beliefs. While these stories are charming myths from a later time, they reflect the awe and mystery the stones have inspired in everyone who has encountered them. Despite extensive archaeological study, geophysical surveys, and decades of research, a definitive answer for Karnak's purpose remains frustratingly out of reach. Part of the challenge is the site's immense age and the fact that its builders left no written records. Unlike the Egyptians or the Romans, their thoughts, beliefs, and intentions are silent. Furthermore, the very nature of the site, an open landscape rather than a contained structure, means that evidence like tools, pottery, or offerings has been scattered and obscured by millennia of weathering and human activity. The stones themselves are the only message, and we are still learning how to read their silent granite language. The Karnak alignments stand as a powerful monument not to a specific answer, but to the profound human need to mark the landscape, to organize our world according to our understanding of the heavens, and to create something so permanent that its question would echo for thousands of years. But the organizational genius of Mohenjo-Daro and the ritual purpose of Karnak stones represent humanity's drive to shape the world above ground. Yet, for our next wonder, we must venture deep below it, into the very earth itself, to a place where survival meant disappearing entirely. In the heart of Turkey's Cappadocia region, known for its fantastical, fairy chimney rock formations, a local man made a discovery in 1963 that would unveil one of the most astonishing architectural feats of the ancient world. While renovating his home, he accidentally broke through a wall in his basement, only to find a mysterious room behind it. Curious, he kept digging, soon discovering a tunnel which led to another room and then another. He had unintentionally found the entrance to a lost city, not of towering structures, but of plunging depths, the Derinkuyu underground city. This was not a simple cave or a single shelter. It was an entire metropolis carved vertically into the soft, malleable volcanic rock of the region, a labyrinthine complex reaching 18 stories deep and capable of housing an estimated 20,000 people along with their livestock and supplies. The scale is almost impossible to grasp until you consider the layout. The city contained everything a population would need to survive a prolonged siege, completely isolated from the surface. There were living quarters, churches with vaulted ceilings and carved crosses, communal kitchens, stables for animals, wine and oil presses, storage rooms, and even a refectory, a large dining hall with long stone tables. This was not a temporary bolt hole, it was a self-sustaining ark designed to endure for months at a time. The true marvel of Derinkuyu, however, lies not in its rooms but in its engineering, which solved the two greatest challenges of subterranean life, air and water. Engineers carved over 50 ventilation shafts that descended hundreds of feet from the surface to the deepest levels, ensuring a constant supply of fresh air throughout the entire city. These shafts were cleverly disguised from the outside, often hidden amongst the natural landscape to avoid detection. Similarly, they tapped into an underground river to provide a reliable water source, carving immense wells that also served as additional ventilation ducts. The water system was designed with remarkable foresight. To prevent poisoning during an attack, the well on the first level could be sealed off from the outside, forcing inhabitants to rely solely on the internal water supply, which was inaccessible from the surface. Of course, the primary reason for this incredible undertaking was defense. The entire city was a fortress designed to vanish from sight. The entrance was secured by massive, rolling stone doors. These were not ordinary gates, they were immense discs of rock, each weighing nearly 1,000 pounds and shaped like millstones. They could be rolled across passageways from the inside, effectively sealing entire sections of the city from invaders. Each level could be isolated from the others, meaning even if an enemy breached the first door, they would be faced with another, and then another, all while being funneled into narrow corridors where defenders could easily pick them off. It was a defensive strategy of incredible sophistication, turning the very geology of the land into an impenetrable shield. But who built this subterranean sanctuary, and why did they feel the need to disappear so completely? While the city was expanded and used by various groups over centuries, including early Christians fleeing Roman persecution, its origins are far older. The first few levels may have been carved by the Phrygians, an Indo-European people, as far back as the 8th century B.C.E. Later, as the region became a crossroads of empire, it offered refuge to anyone fleeing the relentless waves of conquerors, Persians, Macedonians, and later, Arab invaders during the Byzantine Arab Wars. For early Christians, it became a haven where they could practice their faith in secret, safe from the prying eyes of Roman soldiers. The city was connected via miles of tunnels to other underground complexes in the area, including the nearby Kaymakli, creating a vast regional network of refuge. Its existence was a closely guarded secret for centuries, its presence unknown to the outside world until that fateful basement renovation, preserving not just a people, but the breathtaking evidence of their determination to survive against any odds. And now we dive deep literally into a mystery that lies beneath the waves, a submerged enigma that challenges our very understanding of geology and history. Off the coast of Japan's westernmost island, Yonaguni, in water clear enough to see for dozens of feet, a diver in the 1980s discovered something that should not have been there. What he found was not a shipwreck or a coral reef, but a massive angular structure that looked for all the world like a grand stepped pyramid, a monument that seemed to have been carved by human hands. This is the Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling underwater formation that has sparked a fierce and enduring debate. Is this the work of nature, or is it the sunken ruin of a lost civilization? The structure itself is breathtaking in its scale and apparent complexity. It rises from the seabed at a depth of around 82 feet to a summit just 16 feet below the ocean surface. Its most striking features are its stark, clean lines and sharp 90-degree angles. There are what appear to be massive, wide terraces, straight walls, and grand staircases with steps that are almost perfectly uniform in height and width. One prominent feature looks like a carved processional roadway, while another resembles a huge archway. There are even formations that some interpret as carved animal figures, including a distinct turtle and a massive face similar to the Moai of Easter Island. To the untrained eye and to many who have dived there, it feels overwhelmingly artificial, a sacred site that was tragically swallowed by the sea. Geologists, however, offer a powerful and logical counter-argument. They point out that the entire region is composed of sandstone, a sedimentary rock that naturally fractures along straight lines and flat plains due to tectonic stresses. The strong underwater currents surrounding Yonaguni constantly sweep away the sand and erode the softer rock, further accentuating these natural joints and creating what are known as bedding plains. This process can produce remarkably geometric formations that are entirely natural. They argue that the monument's steps are simply the result of these parallel sandstone layers shearing off over millennia. The star of the show, the main terrace, sits directly atop a massive fault line, and the entire structure could be a giant bedrock block that shifted and slumped during a powerful earthquake, its angles predetermined by the natural weaknesses in the stone. Yet, for those who believe the monument is man-made, there are details that the natural theory struggles to explain. Professor Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Bucyrus who has spent decades studying the site, points to specific features that he argues are undeniable signs of human intervention. He notes the presence of what he calls tool marks on the rock and highlights two key holes near the Chinese letter stage-like platform that are perfectly aligned. He asks how natural erosion could create such precise circular boreholes. Furthermore, he and other researchers point to the discovery of what looks like a quarry nearby, with stones that appear to have been cut and removed, and what they interpret as a carved stone relief depicting an animal. If even one of these elements is truly a tool mark, it would be the smoking gun that proves human craftsmanship. This debate inevitably pulls us into the realm of legend and myth. If the Yonaguni monument is man-made, its construction would have to date back to a time when the area was above sea level. This pushes its origin back to the end of the last ice age, over 10,000 years ago, a time when mainstream archaeology tells us humans were primitive hunter-gatherers incapable of such large-scale stonework. This timeline, however, aligns perfectly with the legends of a lost Pacific civilization, often called Mu or Lemuria. These myths speak of a sophisticated continent that sank beneath the waves in a great cataclysm, its survivors seeding cultures around the Pacific Rim. For proponents of this theory, Yonaguni is the most compelling piece of physical evidence yet found, a tangible piece of this sunken world that forces us to reconsider the depth and sophistication of human prehistory. Perhaps the most satisfying and scientifically rigorous answer lies not in choosing one extreme over the other, but in a fascinating middle ground. It is entirely possible that the Yonaguni monument began as a completely natural geological formation. Its striking terraces and clean angles were sculpted by the immense forces of tectonics and erosion. But what if ancient people discovered this awe-inspiring place when it was still above water or just beginning to submerge? They could have recognized its spiritual power and its resemblance to a stepped pyramid or temple. Using simple tools, they might have then modified it, enhancing the natural lines, carving steps a little deeper, quarrying stones from around it to build additional structures, and creating the precise boreholes for ceremonial or practical purposes. In this scenario, Yonaguni becomes a sacred natural site that was ritually appropriated and enhanced by humans, a blend of nature's artistry and humanity's desire to connect with the divine, all before it was finally claimed by the rising ocean. This would make it not a sunken city, but a sunken sanctuary, a place of worship lost to the sea, which in its own way is just as powerful and mysterious a legacy. High on the arid, wind-swept Bolivian Altiplano, at a breathless altitude of over 12,000 feet, stand the ruins of a city that once pulsed with life and ceremony. This is Tiwanaku, the spiritual and political center of a powerful pre-Incan civilization that dominated the Andes for centuries. Amidst the sprawling complex of temples, pyramids, and courtyards, one artifact stands out not for its size, but for its breathtaking intricacy and profound mystery: the Gate of the Sun. Carved from a single, massive block of andesite granite weighing an estimated 10 tons, this monolithic gateway is a masterpiece of ancient art and a cryptic puzzle of astronomical knowledge, left behind by a people who, as far as we know, never developed a system of writing. The first thing that strikes you about the gate is the sheer density of its symbolism. The entire top portion of the arch is covered in an intricate, deeply carved frieze that radiates out from a central figure. This central deity is often identified as the staff god, a recurring figure in Andean iconography, possibly representing Viracocha, the creator god. He stands rigid, holding a staff in each hand, his head adorned with a majestic headdress of radiating symbols. His face is stern, almost weeping, and his expression seems to hold the weight of the cosmos itself. Flanking him on either side are 3 rows of smaller, winged figures, 30 in each row, all turned toward him in a posture of reverence or flight. Some appear to be human, while others have the heads of condors, creating a powerful fusion of the celestial and the earthly. This entire procession is believed to be a complex celestial calendar, a stone almanac marking the passage of time, the movements of the sun, and the cycles of the agricultural year. This is where the mystery truly deepens. The precision and sophistication of this calendar are astounding. Researchers, including the astronomer and mathematician Professor Ludmila Zibanova, have proposed that the 48 figures in the 3 main rows could represent a sophisticated luni-solar calendar. The central god might symbolize the sun, while the 30 figures in each of the 2 outer rows could correspond to the number of days in a solar month. The inner row of 16 figures might then track the lunar cycle or the waxing and waning of the moon. Some have even suggested the entire design encodes a calendar that could predict solstices, equinoxes, and even eclipses. This level of astronomical understanding, etched in stone with such confidence, forces us to ask how the Tiwanaku people achieved it. Without written records to pass down complex mathematical formulas or detailed observational data, this knowledge must have been developed through generations of meticulous sky watching, committed to memory, and encoded into their art and oral traditions. The gate itself may have served as a permanent public reference point, a way to anchor this sacred knowledge in a physical form for priests and astronomers to use. But a calendar requires a fixed point of reference to be useful, and this leads to a second, equally perplexing layer of the mystery. The Gate of the Sun was not discovered in its original location. When European explorers first encountered it in the mid-19th century, it was lying broken and toppled on its side, not far from the main Kalasasaya temple. This means we cannot be certain how it was originally aligned. Was it positioned to catch the first rays of the solstice sun? Did its shadow, or the shadows cast by its intricate carvings, fall on specific markers on the temple floor at key moments in the year? Without knowing its exact original placement and orientation, we are left to interpret its celestial code without its key. The possibility remains that it was not merely a representation of a calendar, but an integral part of a larger astronomical machine, a fixed component in a temple complex that itself functioned as a gigantic observatory. This astronomical function is almost certainly tied to its ritual purpose. Tiwanaku was not a secular city, it was a theocracy, a place where the power of the elite was derived from their perceived connection to the gods and their ability to interpret the will of the cosmos. The Gate of the Sun likely served as the dramatic focal point for elaborate public ceremonies. Imagine a high priest adorned in gold and fine textiles, standing before the gate at dawn on the winter solstice. As the sun's first light broke over the distant Illimani mountain, a beam of light might have struck the central figure of the staff god, seeming to bring him to life and validating the priest's divine authority. The gate would have been a powerful prop in a ritual theater designed to awe the populace and reinforce the social order, proving that the rulers held the secret to the turning of the seasons and the fertility of the crops. It was the point where heaven met earth, where the divine calendar of the sky was made manifest in stone, ensuring the continued order of the world. While the gate of the sun presents a mystery carved in stone for all to see, our next wonder is a secret written on metal, a tantalizing list of lost wealth that has tormented treasure hunters for decades. Among the famous Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the caves of Qumran, one stands entirely apart in both form and function. It is not made of fragile parchment or papyrus, but of beaten, inscribed copper. This is the Copper Scroll, and it is not a religious text, a philosophical treatise, or a historical account. It is, by all appearances, an ancient treasure map. Dated to between 25 and 75 AD, this remarkable document lists 64 locations where staggering quantities of gold, silver, precious spices, and sacred religious objects were allegedly hidden. The sums are not just large, they are legendary, describing over 4,600 talents of gold and silver, a hoard that would be worth billions of dollars today. The mystery of the Copper Scroll begins with its very nature. To read it, archaeologists had to make the agonizing decision to physically cut it into strips, as the oxidized metal was too brittle to unroll. The text that was revealed is brutally practical and frustratingly vague. It reads like a series of inventory notes with entries such as, "In the salt pit that is under the steps, 41 talents of silver," or "In the cave that is next to the fountain belonging to the house of Hakaz, dig 6 cubits, 6 bars of gold." The instructions are specific enough to feel real, yet the landmarks they reference, a ruined aqueduct, a particular riverbed, a place called the Valley of Achor, are either unknown today or were common names for multiple locations. This creates a maddening puzzle. You have a detailed list of directions, but no starting point on the map. It's like being given turn-by-turn navigation without being told what city you're in. This has led to a fundamental debate that lies at the heart of the scroll's enigma. Is this a literal inventory of real treasure, or is it a symbolic religious text? Those who argue for a literal interpretation point to the sheer mundanity of the list. It lacks the poetic or prophetic language found in the other Dead Sea Scrolls. It feels like a straightforward, if secretive, record kept by a temple official or a rebel leader, perhaps during the Jewish revolt against Rome, detailing where they hid their sacred wealth to protect it from plunder. The use of durable copper, an expensive and difficult material to inscribe, suggests the authors intended this record to last, unlike a perishable parchment that might disintegrate. They wanted this list to survive for someone to find. The symbolic interpretation, however, is equally compelling. Some scholars note that the amounts of treasure listed are so astronomically large that they seem implausible, perhaps even mythical. They propose that the scroll does not describe physical treasure, but a spiritual one. The gold and silver could be metaphors for divine wisdom or sacred teachings that were hidden for only the most devout to find. Alternatively, it might be a work of folklore or a piece of temple mythology, detailing a legendary treasure that never actually existed in physical form. The use of copper, a material associated in some ancient texts with divine judgment and endurance, could support this more allegorical reading. Despite numerous expeditions armed with the most advanced technology, ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors, and historical satellite imagery, no significant part of the Copper Scroll's treasure has ever been conclusively found. A few tantalizing clues have emerged, like the discovery of a potential cave of the column mentioned in the scroll, but it was empty. This repeated failure leads to several possibilities. Perhaps the treasure was found and looted long ago, maybe by the Romans themselves. Perhaps natural disasters over 2,000 years, earthquakes, floods, and erosion, have so altered the landscape that the described landmarks are now unrecognizable. Or perhaps the treasure was never meant to be found because it never truly existed, and the Copper Scroll remains one of history's most elaborate and enduring riddles, a testament not to lost gold but to the enduring power of a secret. While the Nazca Lines of Peru capture the world's imagination with their famous animal figures, they are not the only, nor even the most extensive, network of ancient geoglyphs on the planet. For that, we must travel southeast into the high-altitude plains of Bolivia to find a wonder of such staggering scale that it dwarfs all others. Spread across the rugged landscape surrounding the extinct Sajoma volcano lies a sprawling, intricate web of paths known as the Sajoma Line. This is not a collection of individual drawings, but a vast, interconnected labyrinth of perfectly straight lines, etched into the dark, oxidized surface of the Altiplano. These paths, created by simply removing the darker stones to reveal the lighter, sandy soil beneath, form a complex grid of thousands of lines, squares, and radiating patterns. Their sheer numbers are incomprehensible. Researchers estimate there are over 16,000 individual lines, which, if placed end to end, would stretch for an astounding 10,000 miles. This makes the Sajoma Lines the largest known archaeological site in the world, a title they hold not through a single massive structure, but through the cumulative, breathtaking ambition of countless individual paths. The most baffling aspect of these lines is that, like the Nazca Lines, their true form and geometric perfection are only visible from high above. At ground level, a traveler would simply see a series of narrow, cleared paths stretching toward the horizon, disappearing over hills and across valleys. This raises the immediate and profound question: how, and more importantly why, did an ancient culture invest such monumental effort into creating a design they could never hope to see in its entirety? The how, while still impressive, is somewhat more understandable than the why. The lines were created by the indigenous Aymara people over a period of 3,000 years, with the oldest lines dating back to around 1000 BC. The technique was simple but required immense communal effort. Generations of people would have walked these paths, clearing the dark stones and tossing them to the side to create the distinctive light-colored trails. The maintenance alone, ensuring the lines remained visible against wind and erosion, would have been a continuous, centuries-long project, a testament to the cultural importance of this practice. The purpose of this colossal undertaking is where the true mystery lies. Unlike Nazca, there are no giant spiders or monkeys here. The patterns are almost entirely geometric. The leading theory suggests the Sajoma Line served a dual purpose as both a practical pathway system and a deeply sacred ritual landscape. On a practical level, these straight-line paths would have been the most efficient way to traverse the difficult terrain between settlements, holy sites, and burial towers called chulpas. In a landscape where a single mountain or a large boulder can be the only visible landmark for miles, having a straight, physical path to follow would have been an invaluable navigational aid. The lines essentially functioned as a massive, stone-made roadmap connecting communities across the vast and empty plain, but the spiritual significance likely ran much deeper. Many of the lines radiate outward from sacred high-altitude shrines and burial sites, pointing directly toward distant mountains, volcanoes, and other prominent features on the horizon. This has led archaeologists to believe the entire network was a form of cosmological map, connecting the world of the living with the world of the ancestors and the gods. Walking these straight paths may have been a form of pilgrimage, a physical and spiritual journey where the act of moving in a sacred, predetermined straight line across the powerful landscape was itself a form of prayer or communion. The lines themselves, invisible as a whole to those who walked them, were not meant for human eyes. They were intended for the deities inhabiting the mountain peaks and the sky, a massive offering of labor and devotion etched into the very skin of the earth, a permanent prayer visible only from the heavens. The Sajoma Lines stand not as a message but as a meditation, a 3,000-year-old testament to the human desire to find order, meaning, and connection within a vast and powerful natural world. Yet if the Sajoma Lines represent a vast, open-air mystery etched into the earth, Our next discovery pulls us into the dry, silent expanse of China's Taklamakan Desert, where the sands have guarded a secret that fundamentally rewrites the story of human movement and ancient connection. In the late 1980s, Chinese archaeologists made a series of astonishing finds in the Tarim Basin. Excavating ancient cemeteries, they uncovered the remains of individuals who had been naturally mummified by the desert's incredibly arid climate. These weren't just skeletons, these were well-preserved people with intact skin, hair, and clothing, looking as if they had merely fallen asleep centuries ago. But it was their appearance that sent a shockwave through the world of archaeology. These mummies, some dating back as far as 4,000 years, had strikingly Caucasian features, long noses, deep-set eyes, light-colored hair, and tall statures. They were quite literally faces from the West preserved in the heart of the East. This discovery was a profound anomaly that challenged a core narrative of Chinese history. The conventional understanding was that the Tarim Basin had been inhabited solely by peoples of East Asian descent, with migration from the West happening much later along the Silk Road. These mummies, however, were there over 2,000 years before the Silk Road was formally established. Their very existence suggested that a previously unknown migration of people from the steppes of Europe or Western Asia had ventured deep into what is now China during the Bronze Age, settling there and establishing a unique culture. Who were these people? The most compelling genetic and linguistic evidence points to them being early speakers of Tocharian, an Indo-European language. This theory suggests they were a branch of the Yamnaya culture, a nomadic pastoralist people from the Pontic-Caspian steppe who are known to have spread out across Eurasia. Their journey eastward would have been an epic trek across thousands of miles of unforgiving terrain, a testament to human endurance and exploration that had been completely lost to history until these silent witnesses were unearthed. But the mystery of the Tarim mummies extends far beyond their genetics. Their clothing and artifacts tell a story of a sophisticated and unique culture that blended influences from all points of the compass. They were buried with felt hats, dyed woolen ponchos, and leather boots, a style of dress that would not have looked out of place in ancient Europe. One of the most famous mummies, the so-called Beauty of Lulan, was found wearing a simple woolen cap and finely crafted goatskin boots. Another, the Chechen man, was buried in a magnificent crimson tunic and white felt leggings, with a pattern that hints at a possible connection to Celtic tartans. Yet, alongside these Western styles, their culture showed fascinating adaptations to their harsh desert environment and interactions with neighboring peoples. They practiced a form of animal husbandry focused on sheep, cattle, and goats, and some graves contained cheese placed as offerings, making them the source of the oldest known cheese in the world. Perhaps the most captivating aspect of their material culture is the evidence of their far-flung connections. In their graves, archaeologists found items that could only have come from thousands of miles away. There were stones from Central Asia, beads that likely originated in India, and even evidence of cannabis use, which may have had a ritualistic purpose connected to practices from the steppes. This paints a picture not of an isolated group of foreigners, but of a vibrant, cosmopolitan people who were already acting as a crucial link between East and West long before the historical Silk Road. They weren't just passive inhabitants of a remote desert. They were active participants in a vast, prehistoric network of exchange, a web of trade and cultural contact that stretched across the continents. The Tarim Basin, rather than being a barren wasteland at the edge of the world, was in fact a prehistoric crossroads, and these mummies are the proof that the flow of people, ideas, and goods between civilizations is a story far older and more complex than we ever imagined. They force us to replace a simple, linear narrative of history with a much richer, more interconnected tapestry of human movement. Now, from the intricate web of lines in Bolivia's high plains, we journey to another site in the very same country that presents a mystery not of sprawling scale but of impossible precision. Nestled near the shores of Lake Titicaca, not far from the grand structures of Tiwanaku, lies a complex that has become legendary among archaeologists and ancient mystery enthusiasts alike, Puma Punku, which translates to the door of the puma. To call it a ruin feels inadequate. It is more like a geological jigsaw puzzle that has been exploded across the landscape. What remains today is a sprawling field of shattered, scattered stone blocks, but to see them is to witness something that defies all conventional understanding of pre-Columbian technology. These are not simple, rough-hewn rocks. They are architectural components of breathtaking complexity, cut from diorite and sandstone with a level of geometric precision and surface smoothness that seems to belong in a modern machine shop, not on a windswept Bolivian Altiplano plateau dating back over 1,000 years. The most immediately striking features of Puma Punku are the famous H-blocks. These are massive, repeating geometric forms, each one carved with an almost obsessive uniformity. They feature precise, clean-cut notches and identical T-shaped grooves, and they are all exactly the same size. This suggests they were mass-produced, a concept we don't associate with ancient stone masonry. But the true marvel lies in the joining. Many of the stones, particularly the smaller andesite blocks, are cut with a complex system of interlocking tabs and slots. They fit together so perfectly that not even a razor blade can be inserted between them. This is not just skilled craftsmanship. This is a level of precision engineering that implies a profound understanding of stonework, geometry, and stress distribution. The entire site appears to have been designed as a modular system, where these perfectly cut blocks could be slotted together to form massive, stable walls and platforms without the need for mortar. The result would have been a structure incredibly resistant to the earthquakes that frequently shake the region, a testament to both the aesthetic and practical genius of its builders. This level of perfection immediately begs the question, how was it achieved? The conventional archaeological explanation attributes the work to the Tiwanaku culture, which thrived in the region from around 500 to 1000 AD. According to this view, the builders used simple tools, stone hammers, bronze chisels, and abrasive sand coupled with immense patience and generations of accumulated skill. They would have pounded and pecked away at the hard stone for countless hours, slowly shaping each block. The fine details and smooth surfaces would have been achieved through laborious grinding and polishing with sand and water. Proponents of this theory point to the discovery of stone hammers and other simple tools at the site as evidence. They argue that with enough time, manpower, and dedication, such precision is possible, even if it seems superhuman to our modern sensibilities. However, this explanation is met with intense skepticism from many who study the site closely. The primary challenge is the hardness of the stone. Diorite is one of the hardest rocks on Earth, significantly harder than bronze. Using a bronze chisel to shape diorite would be like trying to carve a brick with a piece of chalk. The chisel would blunt and shatter long before it made any significant impression on the stone. Furthermore, the consistency and complexity of the cuts suggest the use of advanced techniques. The inside corners of the H-blocks are perfect 90-degree angles with no telltale tool marks from hand chiseling. The surfaces are not just smooth, they are often perfectly flat, as if they were planed by a machine. This has led to alternative theories that the builders might have possessed lost technologies, such as the ability to temporarily soften the stone using a yet unknown plant-based chemical compound, making it malleable enough to shape and mold almost like clay. Others have proposed they used some form of advanced machinery, perhaps with diamond-tipped tools, to achieve such flawless results. While these ideas are often dismissed as speculative, the physical evidence at Puma Punku makes them difficult to completely ignore. This debate over methodology feeds directly into an even larger and more contentious mystery. Who were the true builders of Puma Punku? The mainstream view firmly places its construction within the Tiwanaku period, around 500 to 600 AD. It is seen as the ceremonial and administrative center of their empire, a site of immense spiritual importance. In this narrative, Puma Punku is a testament to the pinnacle of Tiwanaku engineering and architectural skill. However, a number of researchers point to geological and archaeological clues that suggest a far older origin. The site shows clear evidence of having been struck by a catastrophic flood, likely from Lake Titicaca, which lies nearby. Sediment analysis suggests this flood occurred thousands of years before the rise of the Tiwanaku culture. Even more tellingly, the ruins themselves are not simply aged, they appear shattered. Massive multi-ton blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, are not just toppled, they are thrown around the landscape and pulverized as if by an immense explosive force. This has led to the compelling theory that Puma Punku is far older than we think, and that the Tiwanaku people merely inherited its ruins, building their own structures around the remains of a much older, more advanced civilization that was wiped out by a great cataclysm. In this view, the Tiwanaku were not the builders but the inheritors, living amidst the broken pieces of a technology they could scarcely understand, let alone replicate. Puma Punku, therefore, stands as a haunting and enigmatic landmark, a place where the line between known history and lost high technology blurs into nothingness. And so we arrive at our final wonder, an object whose legend has captivated treasure hunters, theologians, and historians for millennia, a relic of unimaginable power whose current whereabouts form perhaps the most enduring archaeological mystery of all, the Ark of the Covenant. Described in the Hebrew Bible as a sacred chest constructed from acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold, it was far more than a mere container. It was the very throne of God on earth, the focal point of divine presence for the ancient Israelites. Its lid, known as the mercy seat, was adorned with two golden cherubim, and it was from between these figures that God was said to speak to Moses. But the ark was also a vessel of terrifying, lethal power. It could part the waters of the Jordan River, lay waste to the walls of Jericho, and it famously struck dead a well-intentioned man named Uzzah, who simply reached out to steady it when an ox cart stumbled. This was not an artifact to be trifled with. It was both a blessing and a weapon of divine judgment, and its disappearance from the historical record is one of history's most profound vanishing acts. The last clear biblical account of the ark's location places it within Solomon's magnificent temple in Jerusalem, within the innermost sanctum known as the Holy of Holies. After that, the trail goes cold. The most pivotal event in its story is the sacking of Jerusalem by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II in 587 BC. The Babylonians looted and destroyed the temple, carrying its treasures back to Babylon. The biblical book of 2nd Maccabees, however, offers a tantalizing alternative. It claims that the prophet Jeremiah, foreseeing the invasion, took the ark and hid it in a cave on Mount Nebo, declaring that its location would remain secret until God gathered his people together again. This story forms the bedrock of one major line of inquiry, suggesting the ark was never taken to Babylon at all, but remains hidden somewhere in the modern-day Middle East, perhaps still in that long-lost cave. Yet, the most prominent and captivating theory transports the ark far from Jerusalem to the highlands of Ethiopia. This belief is central to the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which asserts that the ark has been housed for centuries in the holy city of Axum, within the chapel of the tablet, adjacent to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. The story, detailed in the Ethiopian national epic the Kebra Nagast, tells of Menelik I, the legendary son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Menelik, it is said, traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father. Upon his return to Ethiopia, he was accompanied by a retinue of Israelite nobles who, at the behest of the angel of the Lord, secretly smuggled the ark out of the temple and replaced it with a perfect replica. According to this tradition, the ark has been under the guardianship of a succession of virgin monks in Axum ever since. its power and sanctity forming the very heart of the Ethiopian Empire and Church. A single guardian, chosen for life, dedicates himself entirely to its protection, and no one else is permitted to see it. This creates a fascinating impasse. The claim is impossible for outsiders to verify, yet it is held with unshakable faith by millions and is treated not as a legend but as a living, breathing reality. Other theories abound, each more intriguing than the last. Some suggest the Ark was taken to Egypt and hidden, or that it was discovered centuries later by the Knights Templar during their excavations beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple. This theory posits that the Templars' sudden rise to power, wealth, and influence was a direct result of finding this sacred relic, which they then smuggled to Europe, possibly hiding it beneath Chartres Cathedral or another of their strongholds. Another idea places it deep within a warren of tunnels beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem itself. Proponents of this theory argue that priests during a time of crisis would have hidden the Ark in a prepared chamber deep underground, a location now inaccessible due to the intense religious and political sensitivities surrounding the site, which is also home to the Islamic Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. This makes any serious archaeological investigation all but impossible. The quest to find the Ark endures because it represents so much more than a search for a golden box. For believers, it is the recovery of God's literal presence on earth, a tangible connection to the divine promises of the Old Testament. For historians, it is the ultimate prize, an artifact that would irrevocably validate the historical accounts of the United Monarchy of Israel. For popular culture, fueled by films like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it is the pinnacle of adventure, a symbol of untold power and mystery. Yet, this very multifaceted nature is also why it may never be found. Its location is shrouded not just in the mists of time, but in layers of faith, nationalism, and deep-seated tradition. Whether it rests in a sealed chapel in Ethiopia, a forgotten cave in Jordan, or a sealed chamber in Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant remains the ultimate ghost in the machine of history, a powerful idea whose physical form continues to elude us, ensuring that the greatest quest of all continues to burn brightly in the human imagination. From the mind-boggling precision of the Great Pyramid to the silent, stoic mystery of the Ark of the Covenant, our journey through these 25 unexplained wonders has taken us across continents and millennia. We've stood in the shadow of the Moai on Easter Island, traced the lines of the Nazca geoglyphs from the air, and puzzled over the intricate mechanics of the Antikythera device. We've descended into the depths of Derinkuyu and plunged beneath the waves off the coast of Yonaguni. Each one of these sites, from the sprawling urban planning of Mohenjo-Daro to the scattered stone jars of Laos, stands as a powerful testament to the breathtaking ingenuity, ambition, and spiritual depth of our ancient ancestors. What these wonders reveal is a far more complex and fascinating human history than any simple timeline can capture. They tell a story not of linear progress, but of flashes of incredible genius, of knowledge gained and then lost, of cultures that rose to magnificent heights and then faded into silence, leaving behind only fragments of their brilliance for us to decipher. They challenge our assumptions, forcing us to ask not just how these things were built, but why. What drove these cultures to invest generations of labor into moving multi-ton stones or carving entire cities from living rock? The answer almost always points to something profound, a deep-seated need to connect with the cosmos, to honor their gods and ancestors, to create order in a chaotic world, and to leave a permanent mark that whispered, "We were here." These mysteries are not mere puzzles to be solved. They are invitations to wonder, to remain curious, and to embrace the fact that our past is still very much alive with questions. So we'd love to hear from you. Which of these 25 wonders captured your imagination the most? Does the lost knowledge behind Puma Punku's perfect stonework keep you up at night? Or are you endlessly fascinated by the cryptographic riddle of the Voynich Manuscript? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. And if you're hungry for more journeys into the forgotten corners of history, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the incredible and often inexplicable